in the NFL, there are a couple big trades now that are brewing because Myles Garrett, he said he wanted to be a part of winning. He said that he would give the Cleveland Browns the opportunity to make a pitch. They made the pitch, and he didn't wait too long to say, yeah, I don't believe that, bro. And he put in out on social media, one out. Right. So now all of a sudden, everybody's minds instantly turned to, you know what, where's he going? And there was a couple of the sports books out there that had the Detroit Lions as the best odds. Obviously, I think that they just know that Detroiters love the better on their team. Maybe if they figured something out. But the best odds to be able to land a Myles Garrett in the trade, I know that we put out a graphic as well online that had a mock trade of a 2025 and a 2026 first-round pick for Myles Garrett. And what I have to ask you, Flannel Sam, is this. Should the Lions go all in for Myles Garrett, you know, KG, JB, Kavasier Chase, or what does all in look like? I really want to kind of know because, listen, we were already talking about Zadarius Smith, Aiden Hutchinson. We were talking about getting Aleem McNeil healthy and DJ Reader. That's solid. But you talking about adding a Myles Garrett to it. We've talked about this several times in this show. I remember Kavasier Chase. I remember you, Flannel Sam. That's just playing with straight dynamite, man. Hey, that's go boom, straight up. And I really don't know if I'm getting suckered in or not, but I really want them to go all in. But I'm curious, Flannel Sam, what is all in and what protects what this team has to do going forward? Because you don't want to lose some of the players you still have to pay.
It's interesting that you asked that. And before I get to that, I just want to clean up one thing. Weezy D through and through. Hopefully y'all will put some respect on Ice Trey now. Listen to the beginning. I gave a lot of flowers to Trae Young because he played excellently last night and he hit the game winner. So shout out Weezy D313. Thank you for watching and thank you for taking your Trae Young victory lap. It's your day to do that. I know you didn't want the Hawks to win. I know you wanted the Pistons to win. So I know you're doing that in good faith. But as far as the Myles Garrett thing goes, as far as the trade, yes, the Lions should trade for Myles Garrett. And even if they have to give up the first-round pick in 2025 and the first-round pick in 2026, I think that the Lions should absolutely do that and go all in. I mean, think about it. Let's just look at Myles Garrett's resume.
Do you, really quick, do you think that's enough, though?
I don't know, but I would give up another pick.
Yeah.
I would. Maybe one of the ones you got for Aaron Glenn going to be the head coach of the New York Jets.
Tell them the resume so they can understand, because I'm to the point where if they're like, we need another one, I'm almost like, here's another one then. Hey, talk to us about it, brother.
Absolutely. 4 first-team All-Pros, Defensive Player of the Year last year. He probably actually deserves to win it this year, too. He just won't get it because the Browns were so bad. He has 102.5 sacks in 8 seasons, 7 consecutive seasons of 10-plus sacks, and he is only 30 years old. He's 29 now. He'll be 30 when the season starts. Abso-freaking-lutely. Myles Garrett is arguably the best defensive player in the entirety of the NFL. And what Myles Garrett on this team would do was give you maybe the 2 people in contention for the best defensive player in the NFL on the same freaking team. And that, of course, is Aiden Hutchinson and Myles Garrett. It would create a edge rushing duo, the likes of which has never been seen in the NFL. Never once. You have never seen anything quite like Myles Garrett on one end and Aiden Hutchinson on the other. And then that would even include, you could throw in on the defensive line, you got Aleem McNeil under a long-term contract. DJ Reader is signed. Zadarius Smith is signed. That is just as deadly as you can possibly be. And before we get into the feasibility of it, if the Lions were able to make this move, you would already have the best offense in the NFL, with the only person who may not get re-signed being Kevin Zeitler. And I think this would also give you the number 1 defense in the NFL if they are fully healthy. Number 1, not top 5, not top 3, number 1. You're talking Myles Garrett, you're talking Aiden Hutchinson, you're talking Aleem, you're talking Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph. Are you kidding me? Best roster in the NFL, prohibitive favorite to win the Super Bowl at least next year, and probably in a 2025 and probably in 2026 as well, because Myles Garrett is under contract for 2 more years.
Yeah, and I trust that Brad Holmes knows exactly what he's doing. I know one of the things that we've seen from other teams out there, and we know that the Lions have done this as well, is, you know what, when it's time to restructure a contract, especially if it's for winning a Super Bowl, these teams and keeping the core pieces together, these players will do it. That's what we've seen. These guys play for each other. They support each other. And I have no worries and concerns about how Brad Holmes chooses to use the cap space, because this, to me right now, is giving yourself a great opportunity to win a Super Bowl in the next year or two if you go out there and you get a player of the ilk of a Myles Garrett. And to me, I'm glad to know that at the trade deadline, the reports came out that, you know what, Brad Holmes did attempt to try and trade for, or at least see what was up with a Myles Garrett as well as a Max Crosby. It shows that, you know, there's something that he sees there, but he played it right. I believe that he's playing it right. You allow the situation to see itself through, and I know that Myles Garrett wanted to be able to give the Browns his undivided attention as they finished out the season, and he was going to give them opportunity to make that pitch. But now that it's not there, I am hoping that with everything Brad Holmes has done to this point, he's given himself the opportunity to play ball in this court right now, which is awesome. Nonetheless, if he chooses not to, I don't believe that indicts their Super Bowl window right now. But I also believe that getting a Myles Garrett is the best thing. It's the number one thing that can help it, in my opinion.
And Myles Garrett wants to win. He said that in his statement. And shout out to Myles Garrett as well, because the Browns were an absolute dumpster fire to the highest degree last year. Following a playoff appearance, you see what happened with the Browns this year, the Deshaun Watson debacle. He got hurt. Jameis Winston is awful. Like everything, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, terrible. They won, I believe, 3 games, maybe 4. Doesn't matter. Still terrible. And Myles Garrett continued to ball out and play his ass off every single game. Just imagine him in a Lions uniform. Him and Aiden Hutchinson would combine for at least 35 sacks. And that might even be on the low end. And I don't want to say they'd combine for 40, because that would mean that they'd have to average 20 between them. But 35 sacks between them is absolutely feasible for those two type of just demons. I believe that those are the 2 best defensive players in the NFL, and you'd have them on the exact same team. And Myles Garrett, because we have to talk about feasibility. Myles Garrett is signed for 2 more years, and he's not even that expensive relative to his production. And the Lions have the cap space. They got over $56 million of cap space. And Myles Garrett, in 2025, his cap hit is $19.7 million, and in 2026, it's $20.3 million. I'm sure he'll ask for an extension at some point, but if his motivation is to win, if his motivation is to come to a team that's ready-made for a Super Bowl, what better than the Detroit Lions right now? And maybe he just wants to play these 2 more years out and then hit the open market. You just never know. Whatever option is there that he wants is available for the Lions to give him.
Yeah, and it's not as if he's necessarily the missing piece. He would be a piece that just pushes this thing into hyperdrive, because I believe as currently constructed and healthy, that the Detroit Lions are Super Bowl contenders, but you add a guy like a Myles Garrett and you give yourself, so from his perspective, I'm hoping that that's how he's seeing it as well. I can go here and be not necessarily a missing piece, but have an opportunity to go there and not have to be everything. Just know that his skill set is going to be alongside a bunch of other people who are going to need to be blocked as well. DJ Reader eats up blocks. Aleem McNeil sheds blocks. Nobody can block Aiden Hutchinson. And now it's just Myles Garrett. Like, good luck, defensive coordinators. Like, seriously. Offensive coordinators. Good luck out there. Like, how do you scheme that? How do you block that? And it does. It puts you on that path where you want to dream a little bit about how many sacks could these bookends get. You know, it's crazy, because then
all the sacks.
Because then you still have Zadarius Smith. It's insane. But someone did ponder, like, if they went out and did a move like that, does that raise the feasibility of Zadarius Smith as a cut candidate?
The question of the day: will Brad Holmes, will he or won't he? And the Lions have never been in this position before. Do I think Brad Holmes will make a move like this? Absolutely. But I also know my GM, and I know that there is a line. There is a line that he will not cross. So would he give up multiple firsts? I do believe that he would do that, especially considering the fact that you are getting some comp picks back in those 3rd round picks that you got for Aaron Glenn leaving. So if you can add those in, maybe, 2 firsts, a 3rd, maybe a 5th. And if they want a player, I can talk a player, but there's a certain line to which players I'm willing to give up. I understand we want to go all in and get a Myles Garrett, but certain players are not on the table if you're the Lions. And I think Brad Holmes knows that, especially offensively. So, I think he would do something like this. And I talked about it a little bit yesterday. The F them picks model It does technically work, and you can technically survive that. If you look at what the Rams have been able to do over the last few years, after they won their Super Bowl, I believe they did have one down year. But after that, you look up, they're right back in the playoffs, and they got a young core of players that look very, very promising going into the future. That's what Brad Holmes can do for our Lions. We already know how good he is at drafting, so where he drafts doesn't really matter. And the fact that you have a chance to weaken, I mean, not necessarily, you have a chance to strengthen the area of this team, which I deem probably the weakest on your team to this point. So you go out, you get a Myles Garrett, and just imagine Myles Garrett, Hutch, DJ Reader, and Aleem McNeil on the same defensive line.
That's
and
incredible.
then you got bookends like Zadarius Smith and Josh Pascal as rotational pieces. That's pretty nasty, man. And I think that would be a move that would put the Lions over the top. So I think that you make the call regardless. I think Brad Holmes is on the phone. I think he knows he has an inside track as to what it would take to get a Myles Garrett because he traded for Zadarius Smith. And, whether or not he does it is one thing or another. But I think it's definitely something he's considering right now. You have
definitely.
to.
And he's handled trades masterfully. I'm not worried about Brad Holmes and trades. You look at his record, his track record right now, and especially with the Lions, and it's something that I'm very comfortable as we enter kind of the speculation season. In the Detroit Lions, for me, when you look at what the Rams did to go all in to try and win a Super Bowl, they didn't have enough before they went all in. When they were faced with this and they got Stafford, they still had to go out and do more. These Detroit Lions is currently constructed. I'm stoked, not scared. I believe that they are Super Bowl contenders. I say that proudly, loudly, and with my chest, put that on wax. So they uniquely have an opportunity, though, because they have a complement of picks. Think about it. All their assets are in good health. From their cap sheet, from their future outlook on assets, they have the ability to do what the Rams did, but actually go all in, starting already as a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. And that's where I'm just like, I trust Brad Holmes. He set himself up massively. And that's why I'm just like, just do it. I'm to the point that's like, whatever picks it takes, give them the picks. Obviously, if they start talking specific players, that's where I would push back a little bit. But understanding what this could mean, you guys have spelled it out, what this could mean for this defensive line and its depth and its rotations. And then bringing back players like Malcolm Rodriguez, I know linebacker, but they're able to utilize him as well in pass rush downs and such. I'm just like, yo, they get so even more nasty. And I don't even know how that's possible. You already had the league crying. You already had the league crying about your level of aggression, your level of physicality, your level of play to the whistle, of your level of, hey, bro, if you don't run out of bounds, we're smacking you. And now you get a chance to add a Myles Garrett to that. I just make that happen. And Flannel, that's where I'm at. Like, I'm at the point where what the Rams did to go all in and they were star-studded, if the Lions could do that, do that.
Hey, and if Myles Garrett gets brought to the Detroit Lions, there are going to be a lot of quarterbacks crying. And you know what? I can't even blame him at that point. I'm not even going to talk any shit if you got to go up. Like, if Jordan Love cries after a game, I'm not even going to say shit because you're going up against Myles Garrett at 8. But anywho, that's beside the point. With this team, one thing we've learned about the Lions in the last couple of years is that they've stayed the course. They've drafted, developed, and re-signed. And they've gotten to a point where going into both of these last two playoffs, they've been like somebody who wasn't the favorite in the NFC, but certainly somebody who you thought could win a couple of games in 2023. But in 2024, they were the Super Bowl favorite, even going into the playoffs despite all of the injuries. But both of those times, they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. Like, think about this. And I don't want to get you guys depressed. I just want to really hammer home how hard it is to make a Super Bowl and win. In 2023, they had a 17-point lead at halftime in the NFC Championship game. In 2024, they had a 15-2 record and the number 1 seed. Neither of those years they even made the Super Bowl for a variety of different reasons. And if you want to talk about injuries costing the Lions their ceiling in 2024, I will agree with that, even though there's no excuse losing to the Commanders, so don't put that on me saying that. But 2024, I believe injuries did cost them their ceiling in a lot of ways. Adding a Myles Garrett actually also gives you some insurance just in case there are major injuries. Once you lost Aiden Hutchinson, the Lions, they were able to tread water and play well defensively, but as you continue to lose guys like Ali McNeil and Carlton Davis, the writing in a lot of ways was always on the wall. So if you continue to add players, if you add a Myles Garrett, if you had a Myles Garrett and an Aiden Hutchinson and a Zadarius Smith who would all be signed, if one of them goes down, it's not the end of the world. And I like that aspect of it as well. And when you look at this Lions team, when you look at how they're set up moving forward, Goff, St. Brown, Panay, Aleem, Decker, and Monty are all signed long-term, all signed till at least 2027, at least through 2027. And then you've got Jahmyr Gibbs with a potential fifth-year option 2027, Jack Campbell with a potential fifth-year option 2027. Whether the Lions will extend him or not, can afford to, that's another conversation for another day. And then you got Ragnow through 2026. J-Mo's fifth-year option would be 2026. Aiden Hutchinson, I'm pretty sure, is going to end up getting extended. Like, no matter what, under no circumstances will he not be as long as he comes back healthy. Laporta 2020 is under contract through 2026. Brian Branch 2026. That's a lot of great players. And if you bring in Myles Garrett, you add him to that list. And I think that automatically makes the Detroit Lions prohibitive Super Bowl favorites for the next 2 years, barring injury, of course. And all of these contracts are already accounted for when it comes to the cap. So you don't have to worry about anything. Don't get me wrong. You might, if you bring in Myles Garrett, do you let Carlton Davis walk? Maybe. Do you let Levi and Barnes walk? Maybe. Zeitler? Maybe. I would do it.
Myles Garrett makes up for a lot of those deficiencies, though. The faster you can get to the quarterback, the better your defense. Flat out.
And the better, what is the normal tandem, the better that secondary is. And they did what? They made a lot of contributions to that secondary. You still have Ennis Rakestraw. You do have Terry Arnold who's going to take a step forward. And you still have capital. They're not going to be void of draft capital or the ability to still go out in free agency and try and make something happen.
No, absolutely. And if I'm Brad Holmes, okay, if you want that extension, I'll give it to you. But you have to play out these last 2 years on your contract. We can't just rip up the contract and start new. I think that's the only real condition, but the fact that he's under contract for 2 years already coming into it, and it's a manageable cap hit. It's not nothing that's going to kill you in the long term. I think the Lions can maneuver this beautifully, man, if they were to actually make a move like that.
They can, and I look forward to players like in the future seeing like the guys who just got the bag. I do think that those are guys who are willing to restructure if it means keeping a piece or two that you believe is vital to your Super Bowl success. That's what's so awesome about when we talk about the ripple effects that Brad Holmes has continued to have on his team. You take care of them early. You give them the bag. You reset the market with these players. And you know what? Why wouldn't they, if you have a chance to win a Super Bowl, restructure it? Because they're still in the prime of their careers. They're not in a situation that Myles Garrett is in right now. They're in a situation where if all goes well, guys like Panay Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who just got the bag, they're going to have a couple more contracts to go. And so they're really in a really good position. Both how this team, like the players, feel about their Super Bowl, and how Brad Holmes has put them in a position to where they can do what they need to do to be able to really push this thing into hyperdrive. And, I see Roderick Turner here in the chat. He says he would like to see a different philosophy. He would like to see Detroit go after a guy like Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati Bengals. He has 1 year left on the contract, and Cincinnati is known for being cheap. He'll be cheaper than Garrett. And my thing is, as currently constructed, I believe they're a Super Bowl team. So, Super Bowl, they can get to the Super Bowl. But Myles Garrett, in my opinion, just makes you that. When I think of Trey Hendrickson, I believe he would bring something, but as currently constructed with like the Zadarius Smith here and how this line already is, that's what I'm like, do you go out of the way to bring in a Hendrickson? Is that the person worth parting with some capital that can help you do the draft? Or is Myles Garrett one of those